Well, I'm live on location. I finally found a cell-friendly spot inside downtown, my local downtown, because our Wi-Fi is not working at home, and apparently cellular is not working anywhere else either. Can you check out that blue heron? It's way back there, but it's real. Just hanging out with us here in my downtown. It's so lovely to have you here, live on location. Okay, let's just flip this around here. Hi, Trina. Okay, so ladies, today I am going to be having a conversation with Trina. She is a second generation homeschooler who is a mom of 3 kiddos, 3 little boys, and delightful. And she is the gal that I am interviewing on this week's podcast. Hey, look at me sitting on the edge of a beach at a dog park, so we should expect unexpected visitors, I'm going to go with. And I'm so glad she's here, because even if you are not in the postpartum phase or the pregnancy phase or in that element of motherhood, or you remember it like it was yesterday, just like I do, because it was so sleep depriving, it was so saturated, like next level saturated. The conversation that her and I had on the podcast was just so inspiring. Even for me, I'm listening to all the things that she shares as little tidbits of wisdom, and I'm like, oh, I wish I knew all those things way back when. Her children are blessed, and also she has so much clarity and Olympic energy to do this mothering thing. And so I want to introduce you to Trina, homeschool mom of 3. She lives in North Carolina, so the exact opposite end of the coast. So Trina, if you are and if we haven't met, I'm Teresa. I'm the certified life coach, homeschool mentor, and homeschool graduate of 4 kids. And I'm here to support you to shed what's not working so you can show up authentically, confidently, and purposefully in your homeschool mom life. Hello, doggy. Just when you sit in a dog park, I guess you're going to get visited by a puppy. So, Trina, I think you need to just request to join. Let's see if I can find you here. No problem. First time is always the biggest challenge. I was telling my husband that I'm going to go live on location, like I'm going to go live inside of our town. And it feels different, even though sometimes I'm in front of like thousands of people. And then I'm like, but also thousands of people and 5 bystanders. So, and a dog and a blue heron. I think I can hear you. Are you there? Hey!
Oh my goodness, I think I got it. I just have to turn my camera around.
That was Olympic level.
Permissions
That was
issue.
Olympic
Sorry.
level effort. No, don't be sorry. It was like Olympic level effort for me to actually find cell. And then when I found cell, I'm like, I also found giant trucks driving by. And I'm like, well, this won't work.
Oh no.
So
okay, well, I
lovely to
can't see you now, but I can see me.
Well, Trina, I did not expect that you and I were going to be hanging out at the local dog park.
Yes, no worries. I'm glad you figured it out. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you anymore, but I can hear you. I don't know if that's just a me problem or if that's everybody. But
would everybody tell me if you can see me or anybody? Interesting. Well, I'm going to go on faith that this is working. Maybe we'll show the picture of the loon again, just in case.
Okay.
You see the loon?
I don't see anything. It's just black on my end, but it could just be me.
Okay, so thank you for sharing that. Mobile Classroom Solutions tells me we can see both. So
good. Okay.
Thank you for
All
your
right.
patience. That
Yeah.
was interesting. I apparently should be moving.
Oh no.
So, did you
That's
get
all
a
right.
chance to listen to the episode yet, our conversation? You've had a few
I did.
too.
I did. I actually was kind of afraid to because I don't know, everyone's probably like this. Doesn't want to hear themselves speak.
I you,
So,
you were amazing. Like I was listening to it going,
oh,
you don't need to
thank
be in the
you.
postpartum pregnancy phase to actually get so much from that conversation.
Oh, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I had so much fun talking to
Yeah.
you and
Yeah.
just kind of recapping. It was like, oh, I just remember all these wonderful moments that we had where I was just learning so much during that time period. It was just like fun to reflect on all of it too. So,
So
yeah.
tell me where you're at now, because I hear all the things that you shared, and I wrote like a storm of them down and then left them at home before I left for town. But
Mm.
there were so many like wise tidbits in there
Oh,
on acceptance and dealing with guilt and like so much stuff that I'm like, you don't actually have to be in the postpartum phase to really appreciate this.
listening to it back, I was like, oh, I could play this for myself because it's like on my
Yeah.
best days, it's like you can have clarity and be like, okay, I know these things and I know these things to be true. Um, and then like, but we all have our worst days or our bad days or whatever it is when we all just need a little encouragement. And I was like, oh yeah, I do feel this way. Like sometimes you just need, I don't know, a reminder. So our conversation was actually timely for me because
Oh, love
sometimes you
that.
have days where you're not feeling as confident. But that day I was, so
Absolutely.
that's great.
Yeah, no, there's times where because I've written for so long, I go back to what I write and I'm like, oh my goodness, I knew that. I'm still learning that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Always learning, never perfect.
yeah, of
It's a
course.
it's a process. So
Yeah, it
let's see
is
if
a
I can get this
process.
whole stuff.
The other
Yeah.
thing that I really learn, like I learn this about myself when I'm podcasting and then I'm editing. I'm intentionally still editing because it helps me to learn to communicate. But there are so many moments where I asked you a question, you answered it, then I went to another thing and I'm like, no, no, I should have gone deeper there. There was so
Yeah.
much possible discussion points that we didn't cover. Is there anything that you felt like, ooh, I wish I had talked about certain things?
Um, I don't know. I think if it would be helpful for other people, I think the only part that I would have probably talked more about was um like preparing for postpartum because I just don't think you really hear people talking about that very often.
Yeah.
I think like you hear people say how hard it is, but I don't think you really hear any practical advice on how to better prepare yourself. Or you'll hear people say things like, this is how you should introduce your children, or these are things you could do with your kids. So it's kind of more like the advice seems more centered on the children,
Oh,
but for yourself, like for your heart and just for your own sanity, I don't hear a lot of like postpartum prep. So
okay, let's
I
talk
think
about
that's,
that.
yeah.
That's actually on my list. And it
Mm,
was so funny that our entire conversation was geared toward that. And I think it was like the last 20 minutes that we started going deeper into discussion about that. Yeah.
right,
So I think we could call it like the Postpartum Overwhelm Prevention Plan,
right.
also known as the
Yeah.
POP. That's so catchy.
Okay. Thought. Perfect.
So, what is on your list? What would you say since you are fresh to this? Clearly, you're
Uh,
fresher than me.
oh my gosh. I went at it from every angle imaginable. Like I had mentioned at the end of the podcast episode, the biggest thing was kind of honestly first getting a therapist to talk about the things that I was nervous about or that didn't go well the first time. So like really talking things through and saying like, what was it that went wrong? Like, what can we change and what can't we change? Because sometimes just even identifying all the things that you can't do anything about that you have no control over. I think that's like, it's scary, but I think that's like a portion of it, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then I think identifying the things that didn't go well that you can change. And so saying, okay, here's the list. And then over a period of time, you don't have to do it all like at once. you have 9 months when you're preparing or whenever you
Or
find
10.
out.
Just say, like, to be clear, it's
Oh
10.
God. Right. And
The
I was
myth.
like a month late with all my kids, or not a month, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
Um, but just going and setting yourself like some goals and saying, these are the things that I didn't like, even down to things with your doctor
Yeah.
or like the hospital setting, like all the things, kind of walking yourself through, like, what was it that kind of triggered me in these moments? And getting a plan around those things. It was a huge difference. And I'm not talking about a birth plan
Yeah.
because we all know that it doesn't work very well to have a birth plan.
Do
But
you know what? I don't know if I've told you this, Trina, but I know this from labor and delivery and postpartum, because that's where I was working before I became a mom. Actually, the year before I became a mom, I was teaching people about all of this. Very sus, very suspicious. But anyways, I was, and I remember people saying that the ones that had the most honed birth plans, the ones that were like, minted and Xerox or
yeah,
laminated and all that, they were the least likely to actually happen. You're
yeah,
most likely to end up in the OR with a C-section. It's kind of like a labor and delivery discussion. Yeah.
yeah. I think honestly, unraveling all of what went wrong, like the first couple of times, was related to like an overly controlling mindset of saying like, this is how it's going to go.
Yep.
This is my plan.
Yep.
And this is going to go the way I want it to. And not leaving space for your intuition and just being flexible in the moment. And so I think the third time around, just being able to say, okay, no, this is like, I don't like the one hand that says, there's nothing I can do, so I'm not going to prepare,
Yeah.
because that doesn't make sense to me. And then on the whole opposite end, saying, I'm going to try to control everything.
Yeah.
Um,
That was me, by
so
the
I
way.
I
I
found
was,
a middle.
yeah, I was definitely
Yeah.
there too. I was thinking, well, I know this stuff, so,
Yeah.
you know, I'll do it right. But you just
Mm-hmm.
go with it in the birth plan. When the actual labor and delivery comes, you're like,
Yeah.
you go with things because it kind of hurts. It's kind of overwhelming
Yeah.
for a solid
And then I
15 to
think,
24 hours.
yeah, and when you know what comes after,
Yeah.
right? Like if it's not your first baby and you know what comes after, the sleep deprivation and like the amount of time it takes you to feel like you again, and just all the things that come with that. And if you're homeschooling, how long until I'm gonna feel like I can get in my rhythm, right? Like I want to go back to the rhythm I had, which you'll never have that same rhythm again, right? Because
Right.
now you have 4 children. So it's a whole thing, but I think just the preparation in every area and taking the time to figure out what do you think your hang-ups are going to be, and then working with somebody, whether it's a friend or a therapist or a life coach like you, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
having like nice long chats where you can try to figure some things out.
Yeah. To clarify you could say maybe limiting beliefs, but you could also
Yeah.
say like the fears. But my
Mm-hmm.
experience as well, and I see this because I'm always encouraging people to journal, is when you actually put your concerns or your thoughts or your ideas, what is the worst case scenario, on paper, then you're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm really afraid of. And then
Mm-hmm.
you can say, okay, well, is this possible? Because sometimes the worst case scenario is possible. And so then what is the plan then? What could you practically do when or if this happens? And then also create the type A plan, the type B plan, the type C plan, because there's so many possibilities. And then of course the one that you actually experience is like the type X or something plan, but at
Right.
least you plan for a few things. What would you say
Yeah.
you would practically do, or what you would practically encourage other moms or homeschool moms that are in that phase, either prepartum, maybe like let's say 32 weeks, where they're
Mhm.
starting to warm up to the, oh my goodness, there's a baby coming and I'm gonna like cook
Yeah.
everything in my freezer and get it prepped.
Yeah. Um, I think as it pertains to homeschool, the most practical thing is that I felt like helped me anyway, was trying to adopt more of, if you're not doing this already, more of like a year-round school type schedule, because your birth is going to happen when it happens. And if you take the approach that like we're going to stay on this rigid schedule, you're going to struggle, because it's not, you can't anticipate how everything's going to work out, right? Like you need to give yourself a break if you can. Like, and you can, because that's why you homeschool, right? So to me, the biggest thing was saying, I'm going to take, 6 weeks, 9 weeks, whatever I want to do. And we're going to have a totally flexible schedule and do like year-round schooling so that we can take this time off. This is our summer. I had a September baby. And so we just homeschooled up until he was born. And then we took a really nice long break, however we needed. And I never had to feel any guilt over not homeschooling.
Yeah.
So that's like probably number one practical tip as far as homeschooling goes. And then just like lower your expectations when you go back in. I decided that I actually heard someone speak on it. I wish I could remember who it was saying like the most important thing they were teaching their kids once they had more than one was how to read. And the practicality of that is you're moving them towards being self-sufficient in their work because you have another little one or two or three or whatever. And so working on those early reading skills, if that's where you're at, and making sure that they could sooner rather than later sit down and read instructions, do some things on their own, huge. So we really focused on like reading, writing, and math. And then the rest is just like life. You're just learning as you're living. So it's quite relaxed.
Yeah.
Yes. So much. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. I think also stocking your sofa with all the things that you need, because you spend an awful lot of time, or at least I did, on the sofa. I was nursing, and in those days we were told you only nurse. Like there was definitely a dichotomy in that realm. And so then we would be on the sofa. I'd be reading to the kids. I should probably like have snacks or sandwiches tucked into the, the increases of the sofa. Yeah.
So many snacks.
Yeah, lots of snacks. But even, asking your oldest kiddo to help you. I know that sometimes there's a discussion around guilt around, should I be asking my oldest to help me so much? But I think we should be okay with that. I really do. And I'm an oldest kiddo, by the way. Did I just call myself a kiddo? To my mom.
You'll always be a kiddo.
But, I think you naturally default to saying, hey, can you go grab me a diaper or something? We shouldn't feel guilty about it. We should just let it be what it is. That is a natural experience of a firstborn child.
I agree. And honestly, I was the youngest of two. I probably would have loved to be a firstborn. Like, give me a job. Like, that's so my personality. I'm like, give me a job. Maybe they like it.
Yeah.
Help them feel involved.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think the biggest challenge, what I see, because I worked with a lot of moms, but I certainly I think I told you it was like almost 15 years or 12 years where I was sleepless, from the first child to the last child, who really stretched out the not going to sleep at night. And I think he was 7 or something. And that sanity thing where it does not feel human. It doesn't feel normal to not get sleep. But meanwhile, you're supposed to like be patient, and you're supposed to keep teaching your kids a normal routine of homeschool stuff. Like it's wildly unrealistic.
Yeah. And I think even beyond like, for me, beyond just the like, oh, I'm not getting sleep, it's funny and we share this experience, I felt more than that. I felt unsafe. I felt like there were like, oh, I feel a heart palpitation, or like I would get this anxiety where I would just be like feeling all these things in my body thinking something was going wrong postpartum. And that's where you start to notice like more of the oh, this might be leading into postpartum anxiety or depression, when you're like, you're panicking that you're unwell. And a lot of it, honestly, is lack of sleep.
Yeah.
Like you're so irrational. Everything feels bad. Like just everything. And for me, that was such a huge part of it, where I had to have like the support system and have all the conversations before giving birth. Like, this is what I do. Watch me do this and talk me out of not leaving the house. Make sure that when I say, oh, I can't fall asleep, they say, someone says, go take a nap. You're like, I'm not a nap person. I can't fall asleep. Like, that's my default. I don't nap. I can't fall asleep. It's like, no, really, go. Like, yeah, go rest. Um, try to turn yourself off, but having that, like, all those conversations beforehand, as many conversations as you need, like tell people exactly what you
Yeah.
need.
I loved
Cute.
it that you shared on the
Mm-hmm.
podcast. You said that you told your mom, listen, you need to say it in a certain way, and you need to say, okay, Trina, you need to leave
Yeah.
now, and you need to be really assertive in how you say it. I love that.
Yeah, because if you're like, would you like to go get a coffee and I'll stay here with your kids? I'd be like, oh no,
No,
I'm fine.
fine.
But if you say,
Yeah, me too.
go, you're going,
Yeah,
I'm insisting you're going, it's like, okay, fine, you twist my arm.
yeah.
There's a difference. Yeah.
I've heard this too, and I didn't do this myself. This was really hard for me to do because of mom guilt again, of leaving my child.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first time I left my 8-week old for an hour, and it was like it felt wrong. It really felt like I can't do this, and she was
Mm-hmm.
colicky too, so it was really hard for me. But as a mom who's been there, done that, and watched a lot of babies grow up, I now go, what's also wrong is the mom feeling like she's losing her sanity, or
Mm-hmm.
feeling like she's really, as you said, not in control, or not aware of safety scenario, or a safety
Yeah.
issues. And so sometimes we just have to go, I totally get it. Your mama instinct is, I need to nurture this child, I'm responsible for this child, and those natural penchants, or that natural energy, is normal. And also sometimes it'll serve everyone better if you go take a break, or if you leave the house for an
Yeah.
hour.
And I think where those like really specific conversations helped me was even in a scenario like this where I had to talk to my mom. Like, she
Yeah.
knew all the things I was doing. She knew the prep I was doing, and we'd have these really frank conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And even talking to her about something like that, where it's like, here's what's happening for me in my head when you say leave. I think, okay, what if he cries and he doesn't stop
Yeah.
crying the entire time I'm gone? And she's like, what if he does cry the whole time that you're
Yeah.
gone? That's okay. I can handle it. And I'm like, but I would feel so guilty
Yeah.
knowing that he's crying and I could stop it, and that you're having to listen to him. And she's like, it's not going to hurt him.
Yeah.
He's okay. I'm
Yeah.
okay. Like, it's okay. And just saying, like, but what happens if that does happen? Like, what if he really does cry the whole time? It's okay. You need someone who's going to tell you that.
Yes.
And you need to tell them that you need them to say that. It's really
Yes.
weird, but yeah.
Yes. I loved your conversation about maternal gatekeeping, actually, because I don't think it is just a discussion for babies, although it feels very heightened when they're little. But even as we have older kids, our tendency is to say, I'm the only one
Yeah.
that can look after this child. And to the exclusion of grandma, no. My husband or my partner, no, not me, I'm the one. I'm the one that can help. And I definitely felt like that as well. I had that instinct. So what have you learned about maternal gatekeeping?
Yeah, I think it really pertains to homeschool also, but maternal gatekeeping is just when you have this thing in your head that tells you that no one else can care for your children, that you're responsible for everything, the entire weight of not just motherhood, but fatherhood and everything else is all you, right? Like, you're just taking all the roles and you're trying to bear it all, and you're saying, I'm the one responsible for these children and only me. Um, and I think once you loosen that and you start to let go of that, you start to see how much happier everyone is. Because in your head, or at least for me, and I think for a lot of moms, you think, even with homeschool, you'd say, I'm homeschooling the children, so like I can't expect dad who has a full-time job to also do things. Well, actually, when he steps into some things like science or, math, whatever it is, if he steps in and he starts doing stuff with them, sometimes he has a way with them that where he says something in a way that they understand it better than when I say it. Or I don't know, there's all these benefits to hearing another person step into those situations.
Yeah.
But just like inviting everyone to fulfill their individual roles, like your grandparents and your friends and your whatever, letting it be a village around your kids, not
Yeah.
just their mom. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. And It even applies to
Hard.
homeschool moms
Hmm.
who who take our role, and this is me too. Like, we take that role
Yeah.
so seriously, which we should, of course. And also, it isn't just our role, and it very much is our culture's
Yeah.
approach to family life, to be family of origins, or a family of creation centric. And I had actually shared something that's not the same concept, but I shared something about my feeling of loss, I think on Threads a few weeks ago, about feeling like it's so weird
Mhm.
launching kids and feeling like, oh, they're growing up, and who am I in this? And one of my grown daughters actually shared with me, you're still a mom, right? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, I
No.
am, I am. But it's so different having them right underfoot and with you all the time, to them being in Italy, which is my daughter. My daughter is there now, one of my girls, and it's very different. So I felt a sense
Yeah.
of loss around that, and how you need to prep for that in the future. And then someone
Yeah.
had shared that they're from a developing part of the world, and they said, this isn't an issue where we are. This isn't how we live life. We live communally. And I'm like, definite advantage. Yeah.
Yeah. I could see that. It's so much like um it's
Sorry,
so
that
much
was
to
a
take on
plane.
one person. Yeah, I heard that was quite noisy.
That was a plane. So far, I've had 9 dogs uh, literally come up to me, and I'm like, hi, doggy, with my hand. And one plane and a loon. It's fun. Keep it fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Just that I think you were saying, especially for homeschool moms, the maternal gatekeeping, I think we do it to such a greater extent because we're with them all the time. It's hard to turn it off because I think if you drop your kids off and you go, okay, new hat, like I'm going to work now, I'm doing this other thing, I'm with these other people. And then, so I don't know that experience, but I can speak for mine. Like when I'm always on 100% of the time, 24/7, it's very hard to let other people into
Yeah.
that. So,
Yes, and also to
yeah.
turn it off, like when there's kid conflict, assuming you have kid conflict in your home, whoever's watching this, and I will assume it because
Yep.
I hear it all the time when parents are like, "Oh, that's a really frustrating part of homeschooling, is constantly being exposed to the kid conflict," which I agree, it really is.
Mhm.
But you
Mhm.
don't always have to address it in the moment. And probably when the kids are younger, you address it more, and you give them the tools, and you help them like process in a variety of situations. And then gradually you hear them arguing in the other room, and you don't address it because they have the tools, and you need to let them figure things out. And there is no such thing
Yep.
as a conflict-free relationship. So you just kind of let things flow. And so you actually, as they get older, even when it comes to conflict, you just sit back a bit. You have to practice control by not interacting with it and saying, I must assert my influence here as a mom. It's hard, but it's kind of necessary, because it turns out they grow up and leave your home and then have conflict by text or by whatever, and have to figure it out.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Mine are so little because I have 7, 3.5, and 9 months, and the 7 and the 3.5-year-old, having a toddler in your homeschool, like having a baby in your homeschool might be easier than having a toddler in your homeschool. I
Yes.
had the oldest and the youngest today during homeschool, but not the middle. He was with my mom. And I was like, wow, I can do this so much easier. It's the toddler. So,
Yes, it is.
so much harder.
Any tips?
Um,
Like,
oh,
constantly feed them, strap them into a high chair? I don't know. Screen time.
oh my
No,
gosh.
did I just say screen time with the toddler? No, I shouldn't say that.
Oh, I
Maybe
mean,
sometimes.
sometimes I'm like, you know what? You're gonna have to do your phonics in your room on the tablet. It does happen. I mean, sometimes it happens.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, or you say like, you know what? I am gonna get you like have some toys that they never get to play with that you always
yeah.
put on like the top shelf or something that's like normally really messy or whatever. And you just go, okay, it's gonna be all right. I'm gonna get out the kinetic sand. It's gonna be okay.
Yes,
And you just put them
yes.
somewhere and they just,
Great idea.
but yeah, have a stockpile of things that they only get to play with when you're homeschooling.
Yeah,
And they're like, oh,
yeah.
I get to have it.
You
Yeah.
know, fast forward a couple decades or more, I guess. parenting, I actually see now, like I was talking with my husband the other day, how we wish, like we miss the little kids stage. I know it seems hard to believe, but I
Yeah.
miss it, even though I'm fully aware that it is so saturating. And I believe if I were to go backwards, go back there, maybe I have strategies and ideas now that I really could use, and I would have a different approach if you really could transport my brain. But if I were to go back then, I'd be like, oh man, this is so saturating. This is too much at times. And I wouldn't say, as someone that doesn't have that stage anymore, I would not say to you, here's the 10 tips, and these are the things you can do to not feel those feelings at times.
Right.
Nope, you're going to. It is
Yeah.
both beautiful in the same day as it is exasperating in the
Mhm.
same day. And you are completely normal if that's your experience. And good and healthy
Yeah.
and right. And there's nothing wrong with you. And you're not, not good enough. You are good enough being fully all those things, all in the same hour, even. All of that is normal.
Yeah. I watch my kids sometimes, like they'll be fighting and like I think this morning my toddler like whacked the 7-year-old over the head with like a Spider-Man or something. And they're just like they're ferociously going after each other. And I came over and I just couldn't stop laughing. And so they just started laughing. I mean, it was probably wrong, but
That's
I just started
great.
laughing and they're laughing and I'm like, do you think you guys can figure this out? Or like, this is kind of hilarious. Like, what are you doing over here? And sometimes you bringing humor into it is just like the only thing you need to do.
That's
I just,
brilliant.
very disarming humor.
Yeah. It's infectious. People want to join you. I have not tried
Mhm.
that enough. Maybe I should try that. Um,
With older children, it might be really offensive if you just start laughing at them. I don't know when this ends, but
yeah, I'm
right
pretty
now,
sure it
laughing
doesn't
is okay.
apply. It doesn't apply to 20 somethings. Yeah, maybe when they're littler.
Hmm.
Yeah, actually, the one other thing that I wanted to chat about before we close, and if you need to go, just let me know. Hey, I've
No,
got
you're
another
good.
dog right beside me. Um, I was going to say that I didn't share it in my podcast episode, but on the post or the show notes of our podcast interview, I talk about my postpartum depression with my third daughter, who is actually having her 19th birthday this week in Italy, you know. And I remember not feeling depressed, not thinking I was depressed. I didn't see it, even though it took nothing for me to start crying in like next level kind of crying, not normal postpartum-ish stuff, but I was like in weepy tears, and it was hard for me to stop. And then I would flip on a dime and feel really hot, angry over nothing. And it was my husband who said, I think you actually might be teetering on the edge of feeling like or experiencing true depression. And I didn't see it. But
Hmm.
I think, I speak about it because it's really, really common. And the experience of like talking about it is something we're almost not supposed to do because you've got this beautiful baby, and it's true, you do, and everything's so lovely, and also your body is like struggling. So whatever you need to do, I think you definitely always need to have an objective friend or connection who says, hey, are you really okay? And
Hmm.
be able to listen to them, because it's a common experience. And so if you want to hear more or read more on my experience, you can always check out my website, which is capturingthecharmlife.com. And our website, or our podcast show notes, is called, well, just type in postpartum to the search bar and you'll find it.
Yep. Yeah, I read what you had shared, and I think I agree. Having someone you almost have to have an agreement, like a person who's going to be keeping an eye on you,
Yeah.
who knows you in and out to the point where they could look at you and be like, she's faking it, or, whatever it is. And I think also having someone that you feel that open with that you can say it. Because I know for me, when I felt those things, I wasn't crying or anything like that. I was
Mm-hmm.
so anxious I could barely function.
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't cry ever.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I don't think that's what it is. And for, I would say like a year, I was struggling so badly. And I was like leaving my mom's house in the car. And I just looked at her and started crying. I'm like, I'm not okay. She's like, oh dear. So, I mean, it happens. And like, it's so, so common. And once I was able to talk
Common.
about it that first time, um, I didn't feel so much shame over it. I think for some reason in my head it was like, oh, I'm gonna have a baby, I'm gonna be so happy, and if I'm not, then for me this was the hormones. I thought someone was gonna take my kid away or decide that I wasn't a fit mother or something, just because I like
Yeah.
was so anxious. It was
Yeah.
like I was scared to say anything because I didn't know what would happen. It's like nothing happens, everyone just wants to help you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you're okay, everybody's okay. They just want to help you. And yeah, the third time around, knowing that I was prone to that, being able to say, all right, we're going to have an action plan. This is probably going to happen again. So let's be prepared and be ready for it. So,
That's brilliant. Yeah. And it's interesting that we're both having very different experiences in how it manifests. And yeah,
yeah.
thank you for sharing that.
Hmm.
And I remember somebody saying that after 3 kids, it's the same amount of work. So I remember, I don't know why someone said that, but I remember talking to a friend who had 5 kids, and I'm like, hey, so this is what I've heard, and I'm pregnant with my third. So I've heard that it's easy after like 2, you've got it figured. And she just looks at me like completely blank, and it's like, no, it's more work.
It's always more work. It's more
Yeah,
food.
you're
It's
right.
more, yeah.
Yeah. To think I planned 10. I wrote this in my high school yearbook that I wanted to have 10 kids, and
10
all the
children.
power to you. If you have 10 kids, you go girl.
Hmm.
But I know there's no way that I could have done that. In fact, 4 was massively stretching, and I don't mean just like in my abdomen. I mean like all of me. There's a reason I'm in this space to this day.
Yeah, I think someone told me that has 3 kids, once they knew I was pregnant. I always love when people give this advice when they know you're about to have 3 children and they're like, they have 3 children, so they're going to tell you how hard it is. But they said having 3 kids is like being in a lake drowning with 2 children and someone throws you a third. And you're like, oh,
Yeah,
so terrible.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. That.
You're like, that's so encouraging. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. So if you are a mom of 12, because I know that one of you is, I'm like, my hat's off, and my hair
Right.
and my all the things. I'm
Hmm.
serious. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Do you have any last thoughts before we close and make sure that I continue to have cellular for this conversation?
No. No, I mean, I think we had such a good discussion. We talked about so many different things, but
We did.
just really grateful to have had someone like you are just such a wonderful person to talk to. Um, Us doing coaching during that time was huge for me. I felt so much more prepared and in a way that was, I didn't think I was strategizing my way out of difficult situations. It was just fully accepting and but also being proactive, and I don't know. It was just really wonderful to have someone who's like not your family, not someone who's like already super invested in your life. Um,
Yeah.
Kind of this objective third party. It is so helpful.
Mm,
Um, and I took you up on that like first call that you
mm,
offered when we met, and it was like, wow, she just really gets me, and um, it's just so helpful. I think whether it's a therapist or a coach or something, having someone that doesn't really know you, so you can just say all the things unfiltered.
yes.
It's brilliant. It's
Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah.
I
Hmm.
know it from experience, but I am truly honored to have met
Yeah.
you. And I don't want this to be a last conversation either.
Oh,
Also,
it
I just
won't.
want to say, like a little side note to your mom. I know she's heard this in the podcast, but like you are amazing, and you just really are. Like there's something unique about you. I talk about this in the podcast about being a second generation homeschooler. I'm
Mhm.
thinking there's some sort of like energy having been homeschooling as a child and moving into homeschooling, like your independence, your
Mhm.
willfulness, your ability to just really make it happen. Wow, hats off to you, and all the other things.
Thank you. That's so
Yeah,
sweet. Thank you.
really true. Yeah, yeah. So both to your mom and to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's been such a pleasure knowing you. The only regret I have is that I couldn't be your doula.
I know.
I was
Someday
like,
I'm
how
gonna
am I
come
not
visit.
there?
Yeah, right.
It was such a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, thank
And yeah,
you.
for those that are following along my podcast, if we haven't already met, I'm Teresa, and my podcast is Homeschool Mama Self Care. You can see it on Apple, Spotify, all the places podcasts play, and listen to the conversation that Trina and I had. It was such a pleasure chatting with you,
Thank
Trina. And I
you.
guess I have to get off this very dirty dog park sandy beach, make it out of here alive.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure chat.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Yeah, bye. Mwah.